Hello, welcome to BEH 221 Resolution-Based Counseling Skills. Today we're going to be talking about how to conduct a 5-stage counseling session using listening skills. So as we've talked about throughout this class and many of the other classes, listening is one of the most important skill sets you can develop. Our goal as competent interviewers and counselors is to facilitate clients making their own decisions, finding their own direction, resolving their concerns, and discovering their true selves. Listening is at the heart of interviewing and counseling. If we truly listen, clients will often find their own resolution for many of their concerns and issues, thus finding new possibilities as they meet life challenges. One of the most important goals of counseling that's really not, covered as much as it could be, is the idea of us as humans having to process our experiences. What I mean by that is whenever something happens to us that's traumatizing or worrying or overwhelming, we need to really talk about it to get an understanding about it. We can dwell on things, and obsess and think about it constantly, but we're not being challenged to look at what happened. And that's what a counselor can do, is help the person process the experiences they've had in order to help them understand those challenges they've had and learn how to overcome them. So really, this whole process is about understanding who we are. Empathetic understanding and careful listening are valuable in all areas of human communication. The specifics of effective interpersonal communication are used in many situations, ranging from helping a couple communicate more effectively to enabling a severely depressed client to make contact with others. They are also used to train AIDS workers in Africa and in interviewing refugees around the world. Furthermore, teaching the social skills of listening has become a standard and common part of individual counseling and psychotherapy. So as we look at listening, we realize that without that particular skill set, nothing else matters. So we're going to talk about the basic listening sequence, or the BLS. When you use the basic listening sequence, you can anticipate how others are likely to respond. There are 5 skills of the basic listening sequence, and the central function of each include: number 1, questioning. Open questions followed by closed questions to bring out client stories and concerns. Number 2, encouraging. Used throughout the session to support clients and provide specifics around their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Number 3, paraphrasing. This catches the cognitive essence of stories and facilitates executive functioning. Number 4, reflected feelings. Provides a foundation for emotional regulation, enabling examination of the complexity of emotions. And number 5, summarizing, which brings order and makes sense of client conversation, thus facilitating executive functioning and emotional regulation. Now, we've talked about these in more detail in previous slideshows, but the important thing is to remember that this basic listening sequence is inherent to every counseling experience. Now, the next part we add to the basic listening sequence is the checkout. And when you add the checkout to this sequence, you have the opportunity to obtain feedback on the accuracy of your listening. Clients will let you know how accurately you have listened. The skills of the BLS need not be used in any specific order, but it is wise to ensure that all are used in listening to client stories. Each person needs to adapt these skills to meet the requirements of the client and the situation. The competent counselor uses client observation skills to note client reactions and intentionally flexes to change style, providing the support the client needs. Now over here on the right hand side is a feelings check-in that they use when counseling children, because again, children are not as in touch with what emotions they're feeling. So, having the child kind of identify how they're feeling based on these visual cues oftentimes provides help. So there's a lot of tools out there that can and should be used in a variety of settings. So let's talk about the 5-stage model for structuring the session. The 5 stages of the well-formed, structured session provide an organizing framework for using the micro skills with multiple theories of counseling and psychotherapy. These 5 stages are: number 1, empathetic relationship; number 2, story and strengths; number 3, goals; number 4, restory; and number 5, action. All counselors and therapists need to establish an empathetic relationship and draw out the client's story. In different ways, explicit or implicit goals are established, and all seek to develop new ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. The circle of the 5 stages of a counseling session in Figure 7 reminds us that helping is a mutual endeavor between client and counselor. We need to be flexible in our use of skills and strategies. A circle has no beginning or end. A circle is a symbol of an egalitarian relationship in which counselor and client work together. The hub of the circle is empathy, positive assets, and wellness, a central part of all stages. So here's Figure 7 and the 5 stages in terms of how they visually look. The empathetic relationship, and we're going to start at the top, and that's kind of 12 o'clock for those of you who still know what clocks look like. Initiating the session, building a rapport, and structuring. Then you have the story and strengths, gathering the data, drawing out stories, concerns, challenges, and issues. Then you work on your goals, mutual goal setting. What does the client want to happen? Then the restory, working, exploring alternatives, confronting incongruities and conflict, and restorying, basically reassessing how the story should go and looking at, the issues from different perspectives. And then finally, the 5th one, action, concluding, generating, and acting on new stories. And in the middle of all of this is empathy, positive assets, the strengths, and wellness. So let's talk about stage 1, empathetic relationship. And again, initiating the session, rapport, trust building, structuring, and preliminary goals. This is our hello. Introducing the session and building rapport are most critical in the first session, but they will remain central in all subsequent sessions. A major rule for establishing rapport is to use the client's name and repeat it periodically throughout the session, personalizing the session. Some situations require more extensive time and attention to the rapport stage than others. It may take several sessions before clients who are culturally different from you develop real trust. And remember, empathy and understanding must always precede any kind of advice or restoring. The structuring the session includes informed consent and ethical issues. Clients need to know their rights and the limitations of the session. Listen for preliminary goals. These early goals provide an initial structure for you as you seek to understand and empathize with the client. Share yourself as appropriate. Be open, authentic, and congruent. And congruent means, kind of mirroring the way that the client interacts. So if they're very bombastic and they use their hands a lot, then, they're going to be comfortable with you doing that. On the other hand, if the client is very quiet and subdued, then a more serious demeanor is appropriate. Encourage clients to ask you questions. This is also the time to explore your cultural and gender differences. Observe and listen. The first session tells you a lot about the client. Note the client's style and seek to mirror his or her language usage. So you don't want to talk above the client using vocabulary that they're not going to be familiar with, but you also don't want to talk down to the client and presume that whatever their job is, that they may not be educated. So you want to listen in order to gauge where your vocabulary and your language structure should be at. Stage 2, story and strengths. Gathering data, drawing out stories, concerns, and strengths. So you draw out the client's story. What are the client's thoughts, feelings, and behavior? Summarizing provides a good way to put the client's conversation into an orderly format. Elaborate the story. Next, explore related thoughts, feelings, and interactions with others. Gather information and data about clients and their perceptions. So in a sense, the original story is like the skeleton, and then the elaboration of the story is all of the muscle and tissue and ligaments and all of that other stuff that goes in along with it. Draw out the strengths and resource stories. Clients grow best when we identify what they can do rather than what they can't do. Don't focus just on difficulties and challenges. Failure to treat. Failure to treat can be the cause of a malpractice suit, and we don't want that. This most often occurs when counselors fail to draw out stories and clients are unclear about what they really want, often resulting in no clear goal for the session. Stage 3, goals. Mutuality and an egalitarian approach. Your active involvement in client goal setting is essential. If you and the client don't know where the session is going, the session may wander with no particular direction. Too often, the client and counselor assume they are working toward the same outcome when actually each of them wants something different. Refining goals and making them more precise. If you searched for a broad goal early in the relationship, they can provide a focus and a general direction. In stage 3, it helps to review early goals, divide them into sub-goals if necessary, and make them truly clear and doable. It has been suggested that if you don't have a goal, you're just complaining. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the whole point of counseling. Continuing with goals, then we have incremental goals. It is often best to start with the specific needed steps to reach a larger goal. Help your clients understand and break down issues into manageable units and measure progress in a step-by-step fashion. Listen and learn the strengths and what has worked with them in the past. The client's positive assets and resources are often the best route toward the resolution of issues. So you have to oftentimes help the client figure out what their strengths are, because especially people with low self-esteem, they've been so rubbed down by society that they don't even realize they have any strengths. Approach and avoidant goals. Approach goals are what clients seek to improve or achieve, such as intimacy or career goals, while avoidant goals are those that the client wants to prevent or decrease, such as anxiety and depression. Depression and anxiety can be reframed with approach goals of managing stress. Depression and anxiety might be avoided via medication. In each of these areas, focusing on strengths, past and present, through positive psychology and positive reframing can make a huge difference. Continuing again with goals, exploration. With many clients, the first step towards clear goals is exploration of possibilities rather than tying things down too quickly. For example, a client may be undecided about a college major or career. While the ultimate goal is that decision, first comes exploration of alternative majors and possible careers. The action goal is really starting to look seriously. Summarizing the difference between the present story and the preferred outcome. Once the goal has been established, a brief summary of the original presenting concern as contrasted with the defined goal can be very helpful. Consider the following model as a basic beginning to working through client issues. This is a possible opening to stage 4, which is restoring using a supportive confrontation. So, let's move on to stage 4 and the restory. Starting the exploration process. How does the counselor help the client work through new solutions? Summarize the client conflict as described in the preceding section. Quote, on the one hand, be sure that your summary of the issue is complete, including both the acts of the situation and the client's thoughts and feelings. Use the basic listening sequence to facilitate the client's resolution of the issues. Encourage client creativity. Your first goal in restoring is to encourage your clients to discover their own solutions. Skilled questioning can be useful in helping clients and find positive solutions. So here are some suggestions. Can you brainstorm ideas? Just anything that occurs to you? What other alternatives can you think of? And tell me about a success that you have had. Interviewers and counselors all try to resolve issues in clients' lives in a similar fashion. The counselor needs to establish rapport, define the issue, and help the client identify desired outcomes. Relate client issues and concerns to desired outcomes. The distinction between the problem and the desired outcome is the major incongruity that may be resolved in 3 basic ways. Number 1, the counselor uses attending skills, and we've talked about them extensively throughout the curriculum. Number 2, counselors can use information, directives, and psychoeducational interventions to help clients generate new answers. Number 3, if clients do not generate their own answers, the counselor can use interpretation, self-disclosure, and other influencing skills to resolve the conflict. Aim for a decision and a new story. This process of exploring, brainstorming, and testing theoretical strategies helps client decision-making and the creation of a new story. To put these ideas into action in the real world, you need to help clients generalize feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, and a plan for action beyond the session itself. So then we move on to our last stage, stage 5, which is action. The complexities of life are such that taking a new behavior back to the home setting may be difficult. How do we generalize thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to our daily life? There is increasing evidence that planning for change greatly increases the likelihood that it will actually occur in the real world. Change does not always come easily, and many clients revert to earlier, less intentional behaviors. Work to help the client plan for change to ensure real-world relevance. On the following slide are 3 techniques that you can use to facilitate the transfer of learning from the session, increasing the likelihood that the client will take new learning home and try new behaviors. So, number 1, contracting. This is the establishment of an informal or written contract. Number 2, homework and journaling. Having to go home, write what they're experiencing, write about what they're thinking, write about the actions they're taking will all help them focus in on what they're supposed to be doing. And then finally, number 3, follow up and support. Ask the client to return for further sessions, each with a specific goal. Follow up is a sign that you care. Behaviors and attitudes learned in the session do not necessarily transfer to daily life without careful planning. Consider asking your client at the close of the interview, will you do it? Because that's the hardest part. Is it easy? Of course not. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But the point is that you can do 99% of the work, and if the client is not ready to make that change, they are not going to change. So part of the conversation is not just helping them figure out what they need to change, but how to change, because change is scary and it really makes people feel like they're on a tightrope without a net. So selling them on the idea of change is one of the most important aspects. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, please ask your instructor. If you are not in our class, please send us a comment and we will be happy to return your information if you have a question, or thank you if you think we're not so bad. Thank you.